Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are in the country today. The voice that you're hearing is Larry Ehrenberger, Senior Vice President for Partnerships at Capture Higher Education. And I want to thank you all that dialed in promptly or early. And we will be starting at 2 o'clock Eastern Time. So it'll be just a couple more minutes and then we'll get things rolling. But thank you all. I'll cover a few housekeeping things when we begin. And then we'll be off and running with Brad and Amanda. So hold tight. And I see we've got a couple more people joining us right now at the top of the hour. I'll give it another minute or so and we'll keep things rolling along. And welcome again to everyone. And for those of you who just joined us, real quickly, the voice you're hearing is Larry Ehrenberger, Senior Vice President for Partnerships at Capture Higher Education. I'll serve as your MC, and I will handle questions that come in. And as one of our housekeeping items, you should all have a control panel where you have the capability of entering questions on that control panel. And we will be responding to those as we go forward. If there are some that are questions that we know we'll be covering in future conversation, we will wait on those and we'll address those as content to where we are. And I have just one quick vignette, since we're all friends of financial aid and enrollment management. And having had 16 years campus-based experience, one of those experiences being Director of Financial Aid as well as Director of Admissions at a small private school in Mount Vernon, Iowa. Rod, you should know where that one is. That experience with me was when I had a president sit in front of me and say, the board will not allow you to expend any more than X amount of dollars on financial aid this year. And I said, we will be under-enrolled. And he said, I understand that completely, but you will not spend more than X amount of dollars on financial aid. So that was that January board conversation follow-up. And we went to the marketplace with our awarding. We did not spend 1 penny more on financial aid than what our budget was allowed, and lo and behold, we were under-enrolled. Interesting things happened at the fall board meeting. They did understand a little bit further on return on investment and the need to spend additional dollars, and goodness sakes, we changed our awarding philosophy. So I say all that to you because really, whether that was 15 or 20 years ago, the story is still the same. We are trying to truly leverage every penny that we have for our institutions to make sure that we get our greatest return on investment. And as we go through today and we talk with Brad and Amanda, they have some great insights in terms of what we are looking at to help our partners optimize and yield and increase the ROI on every dollar that is invested. Because as we all know, relative to our human resources budgets on campus, the financial aid budget is probably the second largest, maybe the physical grounds budget a little bit larger, but we all know the importance of the dollars that are invested so that we get maximum return on investment. Again, I'm going to kick things off with another reminder. You'll see on your control panel the questions that are available, the question box for you to type in, and you can send those privately or send to all. I guess I can send privately or to all, and look forward to receiving your questions. With that, I'm going to kick it off to Brad and Amanda.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Larry. Welcome to everyone. We're very glad and honored that you took time out of your morning or afternoon to join us. And we're going to just go ahead and get started. Today we're talking about the future of financial aid forecasting, how to optimize your yield, and stay within your budget. So we'll move ahead here. Amanda, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Amanda Scott, and like Larry, I've also sat in the Director of Financial Aid seat at a small liberal arts university in Western North Carolina. And past that, my last 6 years have been on the partnership side of enrollment management, enrollment consultation here at Capture and at another employer. So my biggest base is being able to work with colleges and universities, both with admissions and financial aid.
Very good, thanks. Hello, everyone. My name is Brad Weiner. I am one of the data scientists at Capture, and I've been in the higher ed space for 15 years or so. I've worked as a frontline admissions recruiter, but over the last 6 or 7 years, I've done mostly data analytics, predictive modeling for several different universities, most recently the University of Minnesota in the Twin Cities. And so Amanda and I both have a deep knowledge of financial aid, and we're here to talk to you today about what's obviously a compelling challenge in financial aid. And to get started, sorry, my computer. To get started, we came up with this. We discovered this quotation from Aristotle, which is pretty fascinating, and I think very much illustrates the challenge that any financial aid director has. And we won't read this word for word, but basically Aristotle here is talking about how giving away money is easy, but the specific allocation of that money, to whom to give it, when to give it, why to give it, the amount, and the difficulty in doing that is complex. And at the end he says, hence it is that such excellence is rare, praiseworthy, and noble. And so I think anyone who spends time wondering how to allocate a scarce resource would be considered praiseworthy and noble by Aristotle. But rather than being praiseworthy and noble, we're also interested in being data-driven and strategic, and that's what we're here to talk to you about today. So we're going to talk a little bit about financial aid prediction challenges, and Amanda has a bunch of experience in this area, so I'm going to turn it over to her.
Sure. So one of the first challenges that you have with awarding financial aid is you print all these financial aid packages out or email them out, get them out to the students, and you have no clue who's going to accept the award. You could have all of the people with the very highest awards accept all of their awards, or you could have none of those. So your ability to be able to project the discount rate is very hard. And you also tied in with that understanding what your net tuition revenue is going to look like, because you have the messages in the bottle that are going out. I remember when I was talking with my president on campus, his biggest question was, how much will unfunded aid be this year? And I am pretty snazzy at a Excel spreadsheet, and I was really good at math. However, predicting that out was always a little bit of art. I would put my number out there, what I thought it would really be, and then my VP, who's more conservative than me, would add $100,000 on top of it, just to make sure that we were covered. But in the world of unfunded aid, if you're on a $10 million budget, which is actually pretty small these days, 1% of that is $100,000, which is a lot of money. So this challenge of understanding, what you're sending out versus what you're going to receive back in terms of enrolled students and their accepted awards is one of the scary parts of financial aid. One of the additional challenges is one of the most common ways to award financial aid is in a matrix format. And, there are different complex matrices out there. There's very simple ones like the one we have provided here on your screen. And this allows you to group like students together. But not every 3.0 student with a 1470 SAT is going to behave the same way. So this kind of still points to the top challenge of understanding, like, if you want to be able to recruit that individual student, you don't know if for that student that fits the 3.0 and the 1470, if $100 more or, $2,000 more would influence them to come, or if you're over awarding that student, that's an over award situation where a matrices just says, okay, based on your academic qualifications, you qualify for this. Well, you don't know if that is really a great carrot or if it's too much. It also doesn't allow you to be able to customize based on their likelihood to apply. It's static. It is what it is, without going into special circumstances. Matrices stand. And finally, pointing back to the challenge of the group level, which students and at what levels are going to accept their awards on this matrices? It could be the whole top row, which would be great because you'd have a lot of smart kids. But your financial aid budget that Larry was talking about might not fare very well.
Yeah, at the end of the day, these matrices, they're an easy way for admissions offices, which are run by human beings, to sort of conceptualize the way that awards should be allocated. But at the end of the day, they're extremely inefficient. You're grouping together hundreds or dozens or scores or thousands or tens of thousands of students potentially into just a narrow range of buckets. And what that does is that assumes that everyone within that bucket is going to act in the exact same way. And in terms of the technology that we have available now, we can do much better than that and be much more granular. So Amanda just presented two of the challenges that exist out there in terms of predicting financial aid, and the ways that those tend to be done using the data strategies and the predictive strategies that exist currently in the higher ed space. But perhaps known to you, there might be a bunch of data wonks out there and a bunch of data scientists. There might also be people who aren't familiar with newer prediction technologies. But what we'd like to do is kind of quickly run through how other industries and other businesses, so to speak, are solving this exact same business problem, the message in a bottle problem, where money is going out the door but you don't know how much of it is actually going to be redeemed, as well as the inefficiency of the matrix problem, the awarding problem. And so we're going to talk a little bit about a couple of predictions that are out in the real world that are using more sophisticated technology. So what you're looking at right now is something that's probably very familiar to anyone who's in the enrollment space, and it's a matrix that's showing different flight times and different costs. And this is something that you can find on, your Kayak and your Travelocity or any of those types of websites. And airlines, for better or for worse, I know that everyone sort of loves to pile on airlines, but for better or for worse, airlines are one of the best at predicting how much each seat should cost, at differentiating the cost per passenger. And the next time you fly, I would encourage you to just ask the person next to you, assuming it's someone that isn't on your same ticket. If it's your son or daughter or husband or wife or brother or sister, that might not work. But just ask the stranger next to you how much they paid for their ticket, and it is almost certain that they paid something different for that. And what they're doing is they're using a bunch of factors to figure out who is willing to pay and who is able to pay what. So if you fly on a Friday, it's more expensive. If you fly on a Saturday, it's less expensive. And while people in the higher education space are remiss to think of seats on an airline as being similar to seats in an incoming class, they are fairly similar. Every single seat should be filled. And every single seat should be filled at the optimal cost to the institution. And so airlines have been doing this for a long time, and the same exact technology that's available to airlines is certainly available to higher ed as well. The other example that we always like to talk about is your grocery stores and your customer loyalty cards, and the basic idea out there that different purchases are seen as factors that that are related or connected in some way. And so the story that always comes out, it's kind of a classic in data science, but this is known as sort of the beer and diapers problem. And the beer and diapers problem is an apocryphal story. So if you Google it, you'll absolutely find that this story is not exactly true, but it's mostly true. And the way that the beer and diapers story is told is that that a large retailer that's often conceptualized as like a Walmart or a Target was looking at all of the individual purchases that went into a customer shopping basket, and they were looking at all of these different shopping baskets. This statistical method is known as association analysis, and they were looking at all these different relationships of things that went into each customer's basket, and they looked for relationships. And one of the relationships they found is that there were frequently people purchasing both beer and diapers. And they dug into it a little bit more, and they realized that probably what was happening, it's correlational, of course, but they hypothesized that what was going on was that folks were running out of diapers late at night. And when the person, and the story, of course, tends to be told as the guy, you know, you have some hapless guy who goes to the store, is sent to the store to pick up more diapers, and while he's there, the guy says something like, well, while I'm here, I may as well pick up some beer. And those two items sold at a disproportionate rate together. And so the store, realizing this, moved the beer closer to the diapers or the diapers closer to the beer, much to the enjoyment of their bottom line and their executives. So this exact same challenge can be applied in the field of higher ed. And this is a way that machine learning is being used out in the world to help price and develop relationships between different behaviors. And both of these functions are technologies that are known as machine learning. And machine learning, we've defined for you right here. It's a method of data analysis that basically automates the model building process. So a lot of folks out there probably spend time with their institutional researchers and with the data folks on their campus. And the data folks on their campus are going to say, you know, there's like these 8 or 10 factors that tend to predict X or Y, and we're going to put those factors into a model. And the way machine learning works is that it uses an algorithm to build that model. So rather than a person specifying the model, it is the computer does it. And the upshot of this is that it allows for very finely grained, very difficult to detect relationships that you might not otherwise see to come to the forefront. And that's exactly the reason why we illustrate the beer and diapers problem, is that probably no retailer out there would have detected a relationship between beer and diapers, but a machine learning model is certainly able to do that. And Amanda, I know that you often go to the store. You have a couple kiddos. Beer and diapers, you buy them together pretty often?
Yes, my cart usually includes that and some wine.
wine and it could also be the wine and diapers problem for sure.
Right. I will say that Brad taught me this beer and diapers scenario, and I have started noticing end caps that have diapers. Like I found one at CVS that was swimmy diapers next to the beer. So he is actually right on this.
I'm the next time you see it, take a picture. It would be awesome to see it out in the wild. So one of the reason that we talk about machine learning so much at Capture is because it is so much more accurate. You know, we really believe that rather than a human building a predictive model, when the computer builds the model, it's not only going to detect these relationships that you might not otherwise see, it is also going to be considerably more accurate on the final predictions. So when you apply this to financial aid, what we basically have found, and what should make intuitive sense to any of the financial aid folks out there, is that there is going to be some relationship between the amount you spend on aid per student and the effect that aid has on the student's propensity to enroll. So to give you an idea of what's going on here, on the vertical axis, the y-axis off to the left, that is the probability of enrollment, and it goes from 0 to 1, you know, so not going to enroll at all to 100% likely to enroll. And then on the x-axis, the horizontal axis along the bottom, this is the amount of aid per student that is being awarded in the data set for this school. And so you can kind of see that there's this, it's not exactly linear, but it's kind of an S-type curve. And so to break it out for you in a way that I think will make absolute sense to folks is that at the very lowest end, I am absolutely sorry to report to you, but there are people who simply just are not going to enroll at your institution. It is they're not interested, it is too far, it is too expensive. No matter what you give them, aid-wise, they simply aren't going to show up. And that could be a so-called full ride with the whole, the whole package. They're just not going to come. And I'm sure you have a great institution, but that's statistically at least the reality. There are also folks on the opposite end who are really, really likely to come. And these are folks for whom you probably don't have to spend much money to get them there. These are the students who have a lot of institutional loyalty. They've been on campus a bunch. They might love your sports teams. Their brothers or sisters have gone there or are going there, and they just love your school. And in that particular case, you probably don't have to spend too much money to get there. But then in the middle, where we've sort of put this target, there are going to be people for whom aid has an impact on whether or not they enroll. And by increasing their aid incrementally, you can also increase their likelihood to enroll. And subsequently, we'll talk about it a little bit, but there are also going to be folks maybe near the top end for whom you can decrease aid slightly without adversely impacting their likelihood to enroll. And so we've built an entire product based on this thinking, and we are going to show you a little bit of that in just a minute. So Amanda, any thoughts on that before we move forward?
No, I think you covered it well.
All right, cool beans. So we're going to talk about, sorry about that, we're going to talk about 6 ways that machine learning can improve your financial aid forecasting. And at this point, we're going to show you our prediction tool that is called Envision. And so we'll be switching back and forth and discussing these kind of back and forth. So so Amanda, why don't you discuss individual level predictions?
Sure. Individual level predictions will show you on the actual student level who is most likely to enroll. So a picture a CSV file with an indicator 0 to 1 type of scoring system on it, which would show you what propensity each individual, like Amanda Scott, how likely am I to enroll? Like 0.08 or 0.8. Consider one would be lower than another. So it will show you per person. And then what a group level prediction is when you're looking at an entire class coming in, what would be your total enrollment number or your total financial aid spend associated with that final enrollment number. So it's important because you want to be able to look at each individual student so you can treat them separately. And then you also want to be able to say, what's our bottom line, both with our class size and our spend.
So I'm going to switch over here for a second and give everyone an example of this. This is our tool. This is called this is just our Envision dashboard. Envision is our suite of predictive tools at Capture. Let me see if I can blow this up a little bit. There we go. Hopefully that doesn't break anything. And we have a number of different options here, but for the individual predictions, we're going to be making a prediction for every single student. And what this does is this gets us out of the bucket problem, the matrix problem that Amanda described earlier. So each one of these students we've mapped for you, and you can kind of see here's a student from Lentner, Missouri. It has their zip code, and this student has a 0.192 probability of enrollment. And as you zoom in on this map, I know we have some friends and colleagues who are from the Kansas and Missouri area, but you can see the greener the dot, the more likely this student is to enroll. One of the things that's obviously very important with any sort of prediction is that you're able to get the data out of it. So nobody wants to spend all their day clicking around in here. So if you scroll down here, you can see all of these individual data points where you have a particular student, the estimated cost, their zip code, their ID. This ID is actually tied to your CRM, so you can upload it back in, and then their predicted probability of enrollment. And then what we allow you to do at any point is to download these predictions, which I've already done. And so if we kind of scroll over here, you can see my desktop. You can pop open this file and see the individual level predictions. And so these are just the folks who were mapped. You can see they're all from, you know, the Kansas City, Missouri area. And so it has the predicted score. So this data set allows you to upload this into your CRM. The other thing that Amanda mentioned are these group level predictions. So on this group predictions tab, sorry, this is probably going to click off for a second. There we go. Okay. So on this group predictions tab, this is exactly what Amanda was talking about, where not only do you want to know the individual level, but you want to know how many students are going to enroll and what the total spend is going to be. So the individual level predictions get you around that matrix inefficiency problem, but the group level prediction gets you around that message in a bottle problem. So what you're looking at here is you're looking at the total admitted class for Faux State University. Faux State is one of our favorite schools at Capture. It is, in case you're not in on the gag, it is a fake university. We've manufactured all of these data. But let me tell you the lay of the land for Faux State right now, and you can see that in this lower left-hand corner under overall predictions. Right now, Faux State has admitted 4,042 students. Of those 4,042 admitted students, we are predicting using Envision that 1,015 are going to enroll, and that gives them a 25.1% yield rate. Furthermore, Faux State sent out $73.1 million, approximately, technically 73,148,079 in offers out the door to these 4,042 students. And those are all messages in a bottle. However, because they're able to make predictions on it, we are estimating that of those $73 million that went out the door, 28,446 of those dollars are going to actually be redeemed for financial aid. We're also able to, based on that, we're able to predict net tuition revenue, which is currently for them at $17.1 million. So that's a discount rate of 55%. And so this is the solution that allows schools to get around the message in a bottle problem. And if this number is too low, then you can go out with more admissions offers. If it's too high, there are obviously things you can do, but one of the things we recommend is making the prediction before you send out the letters. So you can send us a theoretical or a hypothetical list of students that you're interested in admitting. We can show you what that scenario looks like before you take the action, and if the number is high, you could dial back some of those admits and be strategic about it.
So what Brad's talking about here really ties in with what Larry's opening scenario that he lived through was, where he was told he had to have his aid exactly at one level. He could have predicted out his aid and shown his president exactly what his pool would look like. Like, okay, well, this is exactly the number that you're going to enroll. And I say exactly because I'm not the data scientist on the call. Brad would not say exactly. Within a 99.09% chance of hitting a number around that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's an important point. So we, you can click on this model performance tab, and we are very transparent about the way that the model is built, the type of features that went into the model, and then the accuracy. So this model right here, if anybody ever wants to talk statistics or machine learning, we'd be happy to do it. But this model right here is predicting at 95.77% accuracy. And so we're feeling pretty good about that. I don't think that there are any other statistical methods that will get you that close. We also can show you the breakdown by yield, by decile, and you can see that as the predicted score goes up, so does the yield rate. So we feel pretty good that this is an extremely accurate model, and certainly more accurate than the types of linear models that are common in institutional research offices.
Hey Brad, thank you for going back to the group predictions, and maybe you're headed this way with some of the other breakdown of those projected enrollees, the
Sure.
group level predictions. So.
Absolutely. So we do make one group level prediction, which is going to be your total enrollment based on the number of admits at that point. So let's just say it's early in the year and you sent us only 1,000 admits, but your yield rate was the same. You know, you'd have basically 250 here. So this is whatever the current group is. And then the aid totals are like that. But we also are able to make a couple of subgroup predictions for folks. And these are common ones. We can customize these a little bit, but you can see that this number right here, you know, matches up. So we're estimating 1,015 overall enrollments, but here it is broken out by gender, by income band, high, middle, low, unknown, and whether or not the student has self-identified as being from an underrepresented group or not. So we're estimating, I'll call this just back of the napkin math, you know, about 20% students of color. We also give error distributions on all of these because, as we like to say, you know, we're really accurate, but we're not going to be right on the money. But we like you to know kind of how statistically far off we could potentially be within a standard deviation.
And Brad, so as you shift around, I'll fill a little airspace here and remind everyone that we do have the question box available. If you'd like to forward any of those questions on, we'll be happy to respond to them. Thank you.
Okay, so Amanda, let's go back and talk about some of these other benefits. What do you say?
Sure.
So go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's okay. The third one here is aid leveraging, the ability to adjust offers to optimize your yield or your net tuition revenue. So that you want to go ahead and show us what that looks like?
Sure. So earlier we were talking about that diagram that basically showed that for different folks, they're going to be, let me refresh this. The different folks are going to respond differentially to different aid amounts. And so we have this manual optimization tool that allows you to do just that in real time based on the model that you've built. So again, just to give you the lay of the land here to make sure that everybody understands where we're at, this column where it says start, these numbers should all look familiar to everyone. The 4,042 admits, the 1,015 predicted enrollments, the yield rate here, the messages in a bottle that went out the door, the estimated money that's going to come back as being sort of redeemed. And then we actually added predicted net tuition revenue here. So we did calculate that using kind of the NUCUA standard. But what we've allowed you to scenario build using this model that we built that's highly accurate to see what would happen if you were to make adjustments in your aid strategy. So let's just say that you're in this situation and you're coming in sort of low on this enrollment. You want to bump up that enrollment by a little bit. And so what we allow you to do is we allow you to move people up. And so let's just say that, that you want to give an extra $2,000 to an extra 100 students. You punch that in, and this scenario gets built out for you. Now, the way that this works is this is going to take all of the students and find the relationship between the amount of institutional aid that you're offering and their likelihood to enroll. And it's going to sort them in a very specific order. And what I did here is I picked out the 100 students for whom the smallest upward adjustment in aid is going to have the largest upward adjustment in propensity to enroll. So in other words, these are the students for whom you get the most bang for your buck by adding money to their aid package. And so what we did here is we added $2,000 to 100 students, and those 100 students were selected by the model. And now you kind of have these difference columns. So what you see over here is we gave money to an extra 100 students. We ended up giving $2,000 each, so that's a total of $200,000. Hopefully that math lines up. And we're predicting that for those extra $200,000, this is going to yield 2.8 more students. So you're almost getting 3 students out that. You are getting 3 students out of that. So it went from 1015 to 1018. This obviously causes the yield rate to go up. The amount of money that went out the door also went up, obviously, by $200,000. And then we're also expecting that because students are going to be responsive to this aid, you're actually going to spend $160,000 of those $200,000. And by doing that, you are going to decrease your net tuition revenue, which means by definition, you are going to increase your discount rate. So this is a point right here where maybe these letters haven't gone out the door yet, and maybe you have the opportunity to sit there and ask the question. And I would ask Amanda, as a former financial aid director, Amanda, you're looking at this. How does this scenario look to you? $200,000 for, well, technically $160,000 for an extra 3 students. What do you think?
Well, I'm not liking the discount rate or the net tuition revenue changes, so we might need to rethink it.
Okay.
I'd love to give you an example of where I saw this in my past as well.
I think that would be awesome.
When I was at Mars Hill, we were in Madison County, and the president wanted to reinstate a program that was popular back in the 70s called the MMY Scholarship, the Madison Mitchell Yancey Scholarship, which was the current county and the neighboring counties allowing each of those students to go with a full tuition discount, because this is a private school. So anyways, we had really no way of being able to understand, okay, so if we go out and do this, you know, is this going to have a positive or a negative impact like you're showing here? With the tool, we couldn't upload that section of students, their adjusted aid amounts, and look predictively to see what their indicators showed for their enrollment. So there wasn't enough statistics behind it, and it was just a little bit too scary for the school to pull the trigger, even though back in the 70s it was a really popular program. So I think that's just one application of how you could do this manual aid optimization.
Absolutely. Any sort of scenario that you have, you know, I've heard it in other situations where it's, hey, we are able to move an extra $100,000 into scholarships. To whom should we give that $100,000? This is exactly what this is designed for. This helps you find the students who are most likely going to be most receptive to that aid. So let's, Amanda, if it's cool with you, let me show the opposite side of this. Does that work?
Sure.
Awesome. So I asked Amanda if this looked good to her, and she said that the $160K and the hit to the discount rate for 3 students probably wasn't going to fly. My response, of course, is always a joke, which is, who are these students? You know, they might be Rhodes Scholars or future Nobel laureates or something, and maybe that money totally makes sense. But I think for most enrollment managers, most budget folks, most CFOs, they would look at this and say, that is a lot of money for 3 extra students. But of course, we've built the functionality to go the other way as well. So let's just say you haven't sent the letters out the door, and you're also wanting to optimize your aid in the other direction. So why don't we take away, and by take away, that we're not really taking away, we're just building a scenario to see what would happen if we didn't award a certain amounts for certain students. And let's see what happens if we sort of, quote, take away $2,000 from 100 students. Now again, what this is doing is this is picking the students for whom a decrease in aid is going to have the smallest impact on their propensity to enroll. So rather than the smallest increase in aid having the largest impact to enroll, this has the smallest decrease having the smallest, the largest decrease having the smallest decrease in likelihood to enroll. So it's the exact opposite. And here's the situation that we get now. We have given money to 100 more students, but we've sort of removed money from 100 students. We've spent $200,000 extra dollars, but we have also taken $200,000 away. And just by optimizing that aid, by spending it efficiently, this still yields an extra 2 students. So that's less than the 3 students from earlier, but in getting these extra 2 students, it increases the yield rate, obviously, spends not a dollar more, and in fact, this causes the predicted aid total to go down, which necessarily causes the net tuition revenue to go up and the discount rate to go down. So the story we hear all the time is that boards and provosts and enrollment folks have to vacillate between 2 binary choices. They can either go with financial retrenchment, which is what Larry described earlier, spend less, even if it means we enroll less. Just don't spend any more money. And the other option is spend more to get more. And what we're basically arguing is, just like the way airline seats are priced, there is a happy medium. There is an opportunity to spend less and get more, just by aiding your award in the most efficient way possible.
Hey, Brad, we have a question that came in.
Awesome. Let's hear it.
Thank you for sending it in. And here's the full question. We have somebody who has an institution that has a very fine, granular-based prediction for enrollment on KPIs. And they did like the beer and diaper story. However, can you give some examples, potential examples, of what might be in a model? And I'll cue this up while you move to the model performance chart. The wonderful side of this is when we build our models out, you will see that there are a number of features in the model metrics. And in this particular case, we put 10,443 features or variables into our machine and said, go at it, machine, okay? And that machine came back and said, there's 70 items out of this 10,443 that are having an impact on our ensemble modeling that we're doing. And that ensemble modeling means that it is just not one type of model that's being used to optimize accuracy. It's more than one type of model. And in this case, there's 6 different models being used that are being weighted. Now, the question is, are there any of those natural 2 or 3 higher ed type of things that come into play? And I'm quick to point out that there's 70 features that this machine, this computer selected, and candidly, I don't care if there's something magical in here and at what percentage that weight is. The fact of the matter is the machine said these 70 items predict. Okay, Brad, you might have a couple of examples of some oddities that we've found that have shown up in models, but this goes well beyond what you know about an individual as an institution and goes way out and casts a very wide net on information that we have on those folks. So, Brad?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, I think that it's only natural to try and understand the world, right? You know, why the world works the way it does. And I think that that's a very sort of social science approach, where you build a statistical model based on a hypothesis that was derived from some literature or some theoretical thinking, where you go, you know, what probably matters is the distance that a student is from campus, or whether or not they visited campus. And in many cases, those type of factors that have been provided by the institution do in fact turn up in the model. But in other cases, there are features that end up in the model that are just bizarre and that would not necessarily make sense. So, we have had, the export price of coffee from Suriname, for instance, being the type of variable that would show up in a predictive model. And I'm not trying to make light of this or joke about it, but rather than focusing on interpretability, which is a sort of social science approach, machine learning focuses on, on accuracy. And even though the features that are in that model are technically available, they tend to not make much sense, or they tend to be measuring something that as humans we just don't understand. Why is it that the export price of coffee during the rainy season in Suriname is in your model? I don't know. It is measuring something that we don't know what that is. But at the end of the day, it's making your model incredibly accurate. And that's more of a computer science approach. That's more of a statistical approach using the newest technology. So I hope that answers the question. We don't work in the way that a lot of other folks who are in this space work, where we say, here are the 7 variables that went into your model. What we're going to do instead is we're going to say your model is 95% accurate because we've tested it against more than 10,000 variables and specified that model using a computer that algorithmically picked those choices.
Thank you, Brad.
You're welcome. Are there any other questions I can answer for you, Larry?
Not at this time, but a great tee up as a reminder. Please use that question box. Thanks.
Very good. So, so we just kind of showcased the aid leveraging, and that's one of the benefits. Obviously, just as a quick refresher, this allows you to find and award the students who are most likely to respond to to your aid packages. So we have some other primary benefits. Amanda, what have you got?
I think one of the things that is really good about how we use the financial aid tool is that we iterate regularly. Like if a partner of ours, and I work across all of our partnerships here at Capture, if they want to be able to send us models, they want updates on the models, every week for 6 weeks because they have certain decision days, we can do that. Or if they are enrolling admissions and it needs to be more spread out than that, we can do that too. So I think that is a differentiator in that we understand that there's going to have to be data going back and forth between our partners because we want it to be accurate and we want it to be timely.
Yeah, as you can see over here, there's this iteration number, and let's see what iteration 1 does. They don't appear to be super different, but basically what would happen is, let's say you wanted to send us a bunch of different scenarios. So you were interested in admitting these 1,015 students, on week 1, but then you wanted to just test a group of 50 or 100 or 1,000 other students in week 2, you would send us that as an iteration, and you can toggle between those and see the differential impact. So as Amanda's example was before, maybe someone could send us an iteration that are just the counties that are nearby, and we could run that as a separate iteration and do that all throughout the admission cycle. Another benefit of this is that you are in control. This nifty dashboard that we have access to, you will have access to as the partner. So all these dials and buttons and opportunities to download the data, which is right here, you are able to make all of those decisions. So we build the model for you and specify it, but then once it's built, you have the opportunity to send us whatever iterations you want and then test these on your own web instance, which is pretty cool. And then Amanda, talk to me about data. I know that you're kind of a data monster yourself. Let me hear how you would have used this data in the past.
Right. This allows you to be. I like to be able to see all the columns of data myself. I like to be able to import it into my system and play with it and monkey around with it. And we don't hide that at Capture. You're able to go into the system that Brad is showing. Our partners are able to go in there and play with the numbers themselves, or they can rely on us to do it for them. So I think that that's one of the good parts is that we're not trying to control your data. We're just partnering with you on how you want to use it.
Yeah, and as a quick demonstration, you hit the download button, and what this is the downloaded data from the simulation we did earlier. So here are students at the very top, this student record right here. Again, this ID matches up to your CRM. But here is a student whose original aid package was $17,375. As you may recall, we wanted to offer $2,000 extra to 100 students. So you can see that $2,000 is represented there. And then this is a student now that is being offered $19,375. And their his or her enrollment probability is 0.547. So if I were to scroll down, and sorry if this gives some folks vertigo, let me pull this down for a second. And then I'm guessing somewhere around the 100th record, you'll find this student right here. where this student had the decrease in age. So this is a student who originally was being offered $36,885, had $2,000 subtracted for a total of $34,885, and this student has a whopping 95% probability of enrollment. So you can see, obviously, the award amounts are different, and that difference might might explain a lot of the difference in probability. But the top one was a student who, by adding $2,000, only got them to a 0.54, and this is a student who's still 0.95 even after taking $2,000 away. But to illustrate the point, this data set belongs to you. You can attach it to your CRM and use it however you see fit. And so that's obviously, I mean, for me, I'm a data person. Amanda's a data person. If you don't have access to the data and you can't use it, then there's almost no point in tools like this. So I think that we have about 10 minutes left. Larry, do we have questions coming in, or should we show the automated optimizer?
Yeah, I think one quick one, and I think you just answered it. The question was, can we see the change in enrollment probability and at the student level? And I believe you just illustrated that point where we saw we're adding did shift the enrollment probability. I think what the question really is what was it before? You know, what
Sure.
impact did that have on, was this person at a 0.97 and now they're at a 0.95
Sure.
probability?
No, that's a great question, and one that it's actually on our sort of queue of features to add, so that there's actually an additional column in here. Right now, that isn't exactly in this data set. Obviously, what you could do is you could run this, without the adjustment and download the data and then match it up and see what the difference is. But that's certainly on our roadmap and something that we're going to solve, so that you could see kind of what the baseline is per student, and then you could see what the difference in that probability is. So it's not available in this data set, but it's something we're working on and we should have in the feature set very soon.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So we'd be happy to answer any questions that folks have. And then, Larry, we'd be happy to turn it back over to you so that you can talk about next steps if there aren't any questions.
That sounds good. I'll keep my eyes on the question box as they come in, and we can talk about next steps. This obviously is a group level demonstration of our Envision financial aid service model, and we would certainly welcome to have individual conversations with you and sit down and go through individual scenarios that you're living today and your institutions are living today. And I will tell you, in the past week, we have had two of our partners who have done tuition resets, if you will. A couple of things that we could have done for them is we certainly could have modeled the impact of that tuition reset on probability of students enrolling. Just some things that we can do in a partnership. But what I'm offering up to you is the one-on-one meetings, and there's really, truly a benefit for that. We'd love to have the opportunity for you to sit down with us and go through your individual campus scenarios. If you're willing to do that with us by the 15th of October, roughly 5 weeks from now, we're gonna pay you to do that. And that payment is we're going to apply a 25% discount should you join us. Our services for our Envision financial aid list price is $50,000. If you choose to meet with us and move forward with us, we're going to take $12,500 off of that $50,000, and your net price will be $37,500. So there is timeline for us. We know that for many of you, you're building out potential models at this point in time. You may be in that old matrices world. We know that October 30th is coming up, or October 1st, one of those days where people can start filing again with early FAFSA, and the gates will be open, and it's a great time to have these conversations with us. So that is where we are. We would love to hear back from you. Of course, we have recorded this, and we will be following up with a copy or a link to the recording of today's webinar and conversations and questions that have been brought forward with us. So thank you all very much. Brad, Amanda, any closing comments at this point in time?
Thank you guys for joining us today, and remember that we're just happy to talk with you about the situations that you have on your campus. Larry and I both kind of lived in financial aid world, so we enjoy being able to do that with our current partners, and we'd be happy to do that with you as well.
Absolutely, we appreciate you taking the time. So thank you very much, and please reach out if you have any questions. Amanda, Larry, thank you guys for your time as well. Really always have fun hanging out.
All right, and I'll close things out with you. Some of you may be coming to Boston next week for the NACAC conference. Of course, we'll be there. Please don't be a stranger. Come up, introduce yourself, say, hey, I heard Brad and Amanda talking last week. Tell us more, take me through some scenarios. Here's what we're facing as an institution, and we'll be very happy to take you down the path of how we believe we can help you optimize the dollars and cents that you have so you have the greatest return on your revenue. And again, from a follow-up perspective, we will be sending you additional information. And of course, we know who you are, and we'll be contacting you as well. So we hope that today was beneficial. We've stayed within our allotted hour, and I will address you all by saying thank you, and enjoy the financial season. Take care.